Carlos Nelson with Cascade Sports. And tonight we got a specialty uh, that I don't play golf, but I got a lot of people in my family and friends that do play. And we've got a man on, everybody knows when you play, you drive the ball. The tee off is the big deal. How far can you hit that ball in your attempt to get up on that hole? And we've got uh, a gentleman, Mr. Maurice Allen, who has got has driven the ball longer, the longest length than any other golfer. Am I saying that correct, or what?
I
Run
won a
it
world.
down.
I won a world title once, twice. Uh, I don't have the world record for the longest distance ever hit, but I have hit a golf ball across Niagara Falls, and no one else has done that. So I've had a few things that I've done that no one else has done. But I would say that the bigger part of that is the maturation and growth of myself in the game and understanding that I represent a people along with representing myself throughout this journey. So making sure that I have the ability to make change while I'm in the spotlight rather than making dollars.
uh, this goes right in hand with on Cascade Sports, we have the segment Bridging the Gap Between Sports and Education. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that you was a keynote speaker. Uh, Talk about yourself a little bit. And as I said to you off camera, I usually ask everybody, let's go back to kindergarten and talk about some of the influences and people that mentored you, that you look up to, that you feel gave you inspiration and some lessons in life.
So I look at it simply. I don't care who you are, what situation you grew up in, where you're from. Everybody who you ever come in contact with in life is someone who mentors you, whether you like it or not. If you come across bad people, they teach you what you don't want to be. If you come across good people, they teach you how you want to be. So everybody that you come in contact with has definitely an effect on your life in some way, shape, or form. My situation was, to me, significantly different. I didn't have a choice but to be successful when I became an adult because that was what I was consistently around. My parents were extremely successful. My step parents were extremely successful. The people that I was around my entire life were the best of the best of what they did. Real simple. People have seen the movie Hidden Figures. Catherine Global was my mother's boss. So my mother was a senior project engineer for NASA. My stepfather was a principal on all three levels, elementary, middle, and high school. My dad was a retired military. My stepfather was also retired military as well. Well, my stepfather was retired military. My dad went through the military, stayed for a while, did not finish and retire, left out, went and worked in law enforcement for a short amount. And then my dad was the CEO of the Convention Center of Orlando, Orange County Convention Center, which was the largest convention center at that particular time. He helped it grow to that point, and I believe he was the only black and the first. I know he was the first black here. I think he was the first black in the nation. My stepmother was over parks and recreation, making sure that quote unquote black areas, as they call us, underserved areas, she put programs installing parks and making sure that the parks were up to a certain regulation and they had the things that people needed, also involving fitness and health and fitness in the black communities as well. So with me, it wasn't a situation where I grew up in a household where I was not consistently around people who were doing something great. From an athletic standpoint, I come from an athletic family. I've had multiple people in my family play professional sports. So I grew up in a situation where I was on the sideline for three national championships, was on the sideline for Super Bowls. I watched all my cousins play. So it was nothing for me to grow up around, for instance, Reggie Jackson, Julius Irvin, all these people were my mentors, people I had access to at a very young age and could talk to them about how to be an athlete. What does it take to get to the next level? What do you need to look at? What are you looking for? So with me, it was not a situation of could I be successful? I guess the better question was, could I listen? Could I listen to people who had achieved all of these great things? Not many kids have the opportunity to be around Hall of Famers their entire life and trendsetters and trailblazers. So if I did not take the time to listen, I wouldn't be where I am. But I was not stubborn. I wasn't a person who was going to do it my way. There were some things I definitely wanted to do my way, put my own swagger to it. But I also understood that listening to people who had been there before me was a key part of my growth as well.
So how did you get involved in golf?
Easy. My dad tried to get me involved in the game as a kid. It's not something I took a liking to. I had absolutely no interest. My senior year at Florida A&M, one of my friends bet me I wasn't athletic enough at the golf ball is roughly where it came down to. And what you see is what you get through years of hard work, years of perseverance, and some ups, some downs, but still, it still boils down to hard work and perseverance.
So you also told me that you are a keynote speaker and you speak on diversity. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
For me, it's a little different. I don't look at diversity in the same way that a lot of people do. I think that if you look at 2020 showed you a lot of things. Unfortunately, the thing that will stay into our brain between the pandemic and George Floyd, those are two very big things that happened that year that will probably be the two biggest footnotes on that entire year outside of the public demonstrations that quote unquote supposedly united an entire people. And a lot of companies made these plans and promises publicly about diversity and inclusion and putting money into certain things. And from putting money, I mean giving opportunities. And the truth of the matter is, when you look fast forward 3 years, there is a lot of diversity and inclusion that has taken place because of what happened, unfortunately, with Mr. Floyd. But the truth is, majority of that diversity and inclusion money, the majority of that diversity and inclusion effort has not gone to Black people. A Black man was killed, but the Black people are not benefiting from his martyr at all. There are a lot of others and smaller communities and populations and groups of people that find themselves in a situation where they are consistently being on the receiving end of the Black back. If you look at it, even if you go back into slavery, that's exactly what happened in the United States of America. So for me, my keynote speaking is really to educate people. When I'm talking to corporate and when I'm talking to white people, it's educating them on the things that are happening so that they can understand what diversity and inclusion looks like, what they're not doing that would actually be diversity and inclusion. And it's not talking about giving Black people a handout. And then when I'm talking to Black people from the diversity and inclusion stance, I'm talking about this term that we coined in 2020, which was Black excellence, and not using the term as a colloquialism that we can throw out there as if it's water, but actually have it have some meaning and understand when you use the term Black excellence, that means you have a responsibility to be excellent. You don't just get to reap the benefits without putting in the work. Understanding that you have to put in for the next generation and you have to set the bar and set the tone of respect and hold yourself at a higher standard.
I like that because off camera, you remember I said that I wasn't with that diversity stuff because I felt it took away from Black people, and I feel Black people built this nation. Uh, Black people have uh, contributed to, as far as I'm concerned, everything that was invented by Black people and was stolen. But that's uh, a little on the sarcastic side, but you don't know because, from my perspective, ever since the 7th century, Europeans have controlled the narrative. They control all forms of communications. And so everything that we've been taught and learned and believe has come through a prism that is not ours and is filled with lies and deception. And so when I have a jaundiced eye, but I really like when I said that to you, you said I look at it through a different lens, the diversity issue. And the lens that you're looking at it, I can look through that lens because you see the things why I was saying that I don't go with diversity, that Black people have not really benefited off of the event. It's like uh, MBE status when that was for Black people. And then they said, no, we got to include WNBE. Then we got to include the rainbow. It's nothing, all of us need help, but every time there's something for people of color, they water it down and we don't benefit.
Correct. Yeah, and I think the bigger part of that is just understanding self-respect is the key part. We live in a world where you're able to self-proclaim, and everybody lives off of these affirmations, which to some people is cool, but you still have to be in a position where you showcase your work. It's all about your merit. What have you actually done? I can tell you all these things about how positive and how great you are, or your thought process. But truth be told to you, if you haven't put any work into it, none of that matters. It's a waste of talent. It's a waste of a blessing. So you really have to be in a position where you're doing something greater. And people need to understand that the gifts and or the blessings that you have aren't really for you. They're for something much bigger, and it means you're tied to a responsibility. If I'm a great golfer, then I have a responsibility of going out there and showing the world and representing a people of how great my skill, my talent is. And most importantly, I can let another young person know what they're capable of doing if they have that same skill. It's not necessarily about what you desire in life. Your desires don't always come true. You have to find a realistic viewpoint of what success looks like. And so many times we get caught in our dreams that we miss our blessings that are directly in front of us. And it's become a serious problem, especially in today's world with social media, because you can't control what's being said. And it doesn't mean that back in the day it was any better, but there was validity to the people who were talking. One of the things I talk about in one of my keynote speeches is if you look back 25 years ago with cell phones, 25 years ago with cell phones, everybody was worried about minutes. When you called people, you didn't have these long, frivolous conversations. You didn't have all this small talk. You got directly to the point and you kept it moving because your minutes, calling people long distance, or when you were on the phone, especially in your age group, hey, don't tie up my phone line. I'm expecting a call. You don't know who could be calling. I don't need you talking on the phone all day long. And what we've done is we've watered down the importance of communication. You stated earlier that, white people have been in control of what we've learned and what's been taught and what's been passed down. Well, it's because now everything is so watered down and there's so many people that have the ability to give influence. We don't know what's real. We've watered down communication. We've gotten to a point where our words not our bond. We've gotten to a point where we are so accustomed to telling people things that we don't mean. Even something as simple as when you talk to a person, it's become so common in emails and in corporate conversation. Hey, hope all is well. And I always tell people when they say hope all is well, what the hell are you hoping? Why are you hoping that all is well when you could just ask me? You're going through all these formalities in life that seem as if you're being nice. They seem as if they're enduring, but they really aren't. You're wasting breath. You're wasting the second most powerful thing that you have in this world. Your first, obviously, is time, because time is something that you can't get back. But the second most powerful thing that you have is the ability to communicate. And with communication, you can change so many different things. You can make people happy. You can make people sad. You can motivate. You can inspire, or you can demise. There's so many things that you can do with communication. And because it's free now, remember when texting first came out, it was 15 or 25 cents a text. You would never text someone, WYD. You make sure you filled up that whole 160 characters because your viewpoint was, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this text. I'm not just going to send you a few things. I'm going to send you a whole sentence. When people called you, you made sure you got whatever you could out of that minute call. when you wanted to sit there and have free time talking to your significant other, if you're a young person talking to your boyfriend, girlfriend, you did it after 7 o'clock. But before 7 o'clock, it was always about business. And now what we've gotten to, and the point is, we miss communication. We don't know how to talk to people. You go into a gas station and the clerk or the attendant behind the register is talking on the phone to somebody else. They're not even have the decency to look you in the eye and talk to you. It's almost like you're interrupting their social life while they're at work. And so we continuously talk about Black excellence. We continuously talk about, well, what the white man's doing or what the corporate world's doing, how they're holding us down and all these other things. And the truth of the matter is our day-to-day activities are the simple things that are holding us down because we don't take ourselves serious. And if we don't take ourselves serious, why would I ever expect someone to give me more respect than I give myself?
I like your perspective. I think you and myself are looking at things in the same prism, and a lot of times when you try to have these conversations, uh, it's like you disturbing my peace, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell are you talking about? Your great granny and grandfather turning over in their graves. You done uh, went to a black college, got you a degree. Now you don't went to the white college to get the other degree. Now you the superintendent or you got this position and now you done moved out of your community instead of building in your community. And, you're chasing something that you've been programmed to chase. And then you don't want to look at who you are, what your values are, and you form, to me, you hit it on the nose. I call this the plasticity. And I'm not trying to, Mr. Nelson's really not trying to have no frivolous conversations with you. I don't even call me because most of these people are chasing money. And I wrote a little article about a month ago. I said 99% of all the black people that I know, they'll say whatever you want them to say if you paying them.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where you come into the situation of understanding what life is truly all about. When you look at, and it's I know it's not the PC thing to do, but when you look at the animal kingdom, what do? Animal has a kid, they teach that kid how to be able to be on their own. Whether it be in that particular scenario, it's because at some point the parent moves on and they go to have more kids. But their whole reasoning for living and teaching all these lessons is so that animal can procure food, they can understand how to build a shelter, or they can understand how they need to move, how they need to travel, what dangers to be aware of, and things of that nature. What you find in ourselves is everybody now in today's world says, well, I want my kids to have better than I had. But my question to them would be very simple. You're in a corporate level job. You're in a C-level job. You're in a $500,000 house. You're driving almost $100,000 car. You have a Roth IRA. You have a 401k. You have 401k. You have all these different things going on in your life. What the hell was so bad about how you were brought up? You didn't have everything. You didn't have $250 pair of sneakers. You didn't have an iPhone. You didn't have all these things. And the reason why you are where you are today is because you were hungry. Now, I understand if you were in a situation where y'all had roaches and everything like this and you were just barely above the poverty line. Yes, you should definitely not want your kids to have to endure that. But the rest of this stuff, kid getting upset because they didn't get the color car they want when they turn 16, should be lucky to have a car. Kid mad because they don't have the brand new iPhone. Well, my friends got the iPhone. Oh, I don't have the brand new Jordans. I don't have the brand new LeBrons. I don't have this. I don't have that. Truth of the matter is, as a parent, your job is to teach your kid the lessons that you learn, to give them that relay race, to pass that baton, make sure that they are able to take care of themselves, not give them stuff, but pass that baton so that they are able to live a more efficient life than what you did. Make sure they understand you don't need to rent for 12 years. You need to stay in this same dorm room Rather than going out and moving off campus, you need to take that money that you have and put to the side so that you can purchase your first home when you graduate from college, rather than dumping money into an apartment over and over again and continuously moving up to a cooler and better apartment. And you're looking for your forever house in this apartment, which is not where you need to be spending your money. You know what I'm saying? Things
Oh,
like
I
that.
know what you're saying. It's like uh, investment, and that really doesn't. First of all, we're living in the matrix where the the programmers, they got the world programmed. See, when you can mow down 30 kids and that 25 kids, and that's like 30 years ago. And every year they mow a bunch down. And when you can have these wars, you see what's happening over in the Ukraine. You see what's happening in Africa. You see, and hey, most of our people, they're not even giving none of that a second thought. Unless it affects us directly, our families, most of us is living in the matrix. You know, whatever they're saying on the news, whatever, and keeping it moving.
Yeah, and that's the big part of it. So when I give these keynote speeches, it's more about trying to get people to understand growth. You want people to have a quest to gain more knowledge. You don't want to give them everything. You want them to go and find some things on their own. I always challenge people to put the things that they were taught as kids through the test of investigation to see if it's actually still applicable. Remember, at one point in life, it was okay to call us niggas. And at some point, that transitioned out. It transitioned to being colored or Negro or Black, or now none of that's acceptable. And there were a lot of people who grew up where that was an acceptable thing to label us as. And you can't be stuck in the past. I'm not saying that your parents, grandparents, or family members didn't give you the best information that they had at that time with what was in front of them. But the thing you have to understand as an individual, there is an evolution of human behavior. There's an evolution of time. And as you find yourself evolving, or as you find yourself living longer, you must evolve with what's best with what you know at that moment. Now, that doesn't mean that your principles in life change. Your principles are what they are, whatever you believe in as your principles. But how you go about getting from point A to point B sometimes does have to change. And we can't be afraid to make that change.
What I would ask you in closing, what encouragement or what would you have to say to young adults of people of color specifically?
Understand your past, understand your history. Don't take the things that you have in front of you for granted, because somebody somebody put in a lot of work for you to get the opportunity that you have, and you don't squander it. I remember when I won my world championship, I got in a lot of trouble for this, but I was on national TV and I said that I was one of the prayers that was answered from the slaves that were beaten, raped, and murdered in the fields. And I'm a firm believer in that. You know, 150 years ago, people were praying for a better day that they knew they would never see coming. We have to understand that we're a connection between the past and the future, which is the present, and understanding that you have to honor those who came before you and the work that they put in so that you're able to live whatever life it is that you live right now. And most importantly, you live a life where you're able to make change. 150 years ago, they weren't able to make change. The only other change that they were able to make was death. For the vast majority of them, they weren't able to run. And if they did run and they got caught, they knew it was death. They knew when they were on the boats and they jumped over the edge that freedom was death rather than to be bonded in chains. We're not necessarily bonded in that same manner. In our particular situation, education is our freedom. People have to understand how important, especially in the United States, getting the education is. Everybody thinks that the way out is through sports. The only reason why LeBron James has the impact that he has is because he's smart. He understood education was important. he's made a lot of money and he could have blown a lot of money if he was not smart. So make sure that you really find a way to navigate this thing with your brain, because your brain will always outlast any physical ability that you may have. So really understand what you're doing and who you're doing it for and the people who came before you, because that's extremely important.
Hey, I'm stealing again my boy Watts. He closes with his interviews. It was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on the show. I'll be like, Watts, cut out with all the niceties. You in the morning he calls you, good morning, how are you feeling? And all of that. I'm like, man, cut the niceties, cut through this what you need.
Right.
So it was a plum pleasing pleasure having you on, because you're you're serious about the community from my perspective. I can't talk about how everybody else has heard your conversation, and understanding what's important
Yeah.
in life.
Um, it's simple, man. I always tell people when they question a person's quote unquote intent. You know, in today's word we use the word intent very loosely. But I always tell people it's simple. Show me where you spend your money and I'll show you where your heart's at. My money goes back into my community. I put my money into Black people. I put a lot of money into Black people. I put my time into Black people. So I put my communication into Black people. So I put the three major things that you have in this world: your time, which you can't get back; your communication, which is your way of impacting and influencing other people; and then my money, which is what I work so hard to get. So if I'm putting all three of those into my community, then I don't have to show you nothing else. That's where my heart is all day long.
I love it. And as we always say in closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.